And the two things that if I could boil it down to two things, one is novelty. It's important that this needs to be something new, or at least a new spin on something that maybe they haven't heard before. And the other thing is that, okay, well, something can be new, but maybe nobody cares about it. The other thing is it's got to resonate. It's got to be something that says, yes, that is important to me. I have some type of emotional reaction to that makes me think, I've not heard of, I've not seen a book like this before, or an article like this before, but I can tell right now that I'm going to like it. And so those were two things that I learned via blogging. But so I wrote for, I've been with the LA Times for 8 years, and still I'm there every once in a while. Same goes Chicago Tribune for 6 years, and a bunch of other magazines. And the way that I put it in my book proposal was that was my brand awareness, because when people read the LA Times, they're not thinking, I'm reading James Fell's article. They're thinking, I'm reading the LA Times. They may not even notice the author most of the time.
Right.
That being said, they did, when they look at my blog or look at my book or whatever, and they say, oh, he writes for the LA Times. He writes for the Chicago Tribune. He must be legit. Like it gives you that branding legitimacy that makes you seem like you're not just some fly by night person. Mm-hmm. So that was, so I broke that down in my proposal. The thing that really impressed the publishers was that I had high blog traffic and I had really big social media reach. I was reaching millions of people on Facebook alone each month. And that was something that they really liked and now that's the direct contact with potential readers, because when people go to bodyforwife.com, they're thinking, I'm on James Fell's website. Like they know that, and they're going to be going there again and again. And when I say, hey, I got a new book coming out, those readers are far more likely to actually buy that book. Same thing with when they're on James Fell's Facebook page or Twitter feed. They know who they're reading, and it's just a much more intimate contact. I'm reaching fewer people, but these are people that are the real potential buyers. So that was something that I worked hard to cultivate, was that blog audience and that social media audience. And I was surprised, I put all those numbers for the previous 6 months into my book proposal. And the publishers, they all said, wow, like your numbers are great. They were like, yeah, LA Times, Chicago Tribune, that's cool. That's great. Let's talk about these numbers. And so that was a fascinating insight into the publishing industry about how much respect they had for Facebook presence specifically, and blog traffic. So that's one side of it. The other side, the idea generation, that I came to I talked about the idea has to be novel and it has to resonate. Well, I spent a lot of time trying to figure out that I knew that my issue here was that it wasn't lack of reach. I'd had this big platform for quite a while. My issue was that I just didn't have the right idea yet. I hadn't positioned myself properly yet. And so I fired my old agent because he wasn't doing anything. And he thought every idea I had was a great one, which was BS. And so I went to a new agent that was a referral from a friend, and they were vicious. I was trying to still be kind of weight loss oriented, and they were crapping on ideas, saying, no, that's not going to do it. No, not good enough. And then I got the recommendation to read Malcolm Gladwell, just because he's such a mega bestseller. And so I started reading Malcolm Gladwell thinking, yeah, this guy's he's got an angle. He's got a formula here. And so I kind of copied about half of his formula. I borrowed his formula and some other formulas and kind of came up with my own concept for a book idea, which is find something that people have heard of before. Like, for example, with Blink, people have heard of gut instinct, or with The Tipping Point, they've heard of practice makes perfect. And so with my book, The Holy Shit Moment, it's about the life-changing epiphany. People know about that. Like they're familiar with it.
Right.
And so that was the part of the formula that fit. And it was also the kind of counterintuitive angle. Like with Blink, the argument is being made that in some cases, going with your gut instinct is a better decision than careful deliberation, and doing lots of research. And in my book, we talk about how, maybe the whole thing of the tortoise winning the race, slow and steady baby steps to behavior change isn't the right way to do it. Maybe you should just do a sudden leap because of this transformative, life-changing experience and just go in a totally new direction, fast and furious. And then there was the whole include anecdotes and expert interviews and lots of science. But then I added a considerable how-to component. Mm-hmm. But really, so that was, I created the outline of how the book would be organized before I had the idea. Mm-hmm. I just knew that it had to fit within that model. And then I spent, one of the things I talk about in the book is how you have these massive life-changing insights often is through analysis followed by distraction. So you spend a lot of time analyzing the problem and thinking and collecting research, and then go outside and get away from technological distractions and just do, free association. And I spent 3 months in the saddle of my bike, just going for rides in a good mood, looking at the mountains and the trees and the grass, and just knew that eventually it's going to pop in. And eventually it did. And it came to me because of, I saw a guy wearing a Boston Marathon shirt, and I thought to myself, hey, I did that. And then I remembered that I used to really suck at running, and that triggered the memory about how my life changed very quickly. And I thought, that's it. That's, the whole life-changing epiphany. That's my book idea. And I knew in an instant that this was the book that I had to write. Yeah. And well, the first thing I did was I pulled over and I pulled up my phone and I started Googling to see if anybody else had done it. And there had been, there'd been some academic studies, and there'd been some purely anecdotal, like just stories of life-changing epiphanies. Mm-hmm. No science, just pure, essays of anecdotes. No analysis, no scientific investigation, certainly no how-to component. And the how-to component came later. That was my agent's suggestion, because I thought it would be, I thought, I don't know. That seems kind of ridiculous, telling people how to have a life-changing epiphany. And my agent said, well, could you? And I thought, well, I don't know. So I start doing all these interviews with these, world-leading researchers and ask them that question. And they said, oh, yeah, absolutely. You can prime for this. And there's a great book called The Eureka Factor by John Kunios and Mark Beeman. They're a pair of psychology professors. And they did some fascinating research using fMRI and EEG technology to analyze the moment of sudden insight. And I interviewed Mark Beeman for the book. And one of the things that they say in their book, The Eureka Factor, is that these insights are like cats. They can't necessarily be called, but they can be coaxed. So that's what the whole how-to component of the holy shit moment is setting yourself up to coax this massive transformative event. And I'm clear there's no guarantees it's going to work, right? We're just trying to set the stage to dramatically increase the likelihood, as well as, engaging in some behaviors that even if you don't have that massive life-changing moment, you're going to be better off. Like you're still going to get value out of this process.
Yeah. That's fascinating. Again, thank you so much. You covered a lot of
details, but you did ask for details.
I did. No, that's great. So the other detailed question I want to ask is, so the different anecdotes you wrote about in your book, how did you meet those individuals, or did you meet them and interview them about their experiences, and how did you decide which ones to use in the book?
So they were all done over the phone.
Okay.
Because I don't think there was anybody in my local city, and I wasn't gonna, I interviewed one woman in Australia. I wasn't gonna fly down there for an interview. So over the phone or via Skype was the way that I did them. But having that large Facebook presence really came in handy. So I just, it was funny because as soon as I got this idea on my bike ride and I got home, I posted to Facebook, asking if people had such a life-changing moment where suddenly they knew that they were delivered this quest, this vision that they had to fulfill, and that they were overwhelmingly motivated to do it And they did do it. They followed through and they adhered to the new path. And my comments field blew up. I was amazed at how many people responded. And I was like, wow, so this is really a thing. Like, this happens to a lot of people. Yeah. And some of those people I ended up interviewing for the book. And then other ones, like, there was the whole fleshing out the pitch and working at it. And when I said to my agent saying, this is my book idea, they said, okay, write an introduction. That was the first book idea that they didn't shit on. And then they said, write an introduction. So I wrote an introduction. They said, congratulations, you pulled it off. This is good stuff. Keep going. So it was, then I just, just having a big network of people, and I did more call outs just for stories and did some investigation, and I had way more people potentially to talk to than I ever would have needed, just because, again, that large social media reach. And that's been a boon to my career for years, that anytime I needed an anecdote for an article, whether it was, I wrote a piece for the Chicago Tribune about childhood sexual abuse and weight gain, and got 150 emails from people willing to tell me their story about how they'd been abused as a child and how it contributed to their weight gain as an adult. That anytime I ask for an interview subject on something, I am just, because I've developed a reputation as a guy that doesn't screw over the people that he interviews. That when I interview someone, my reputation is that I'm going to be kind and compassionate and honest and accurate, and I'm not going to try and make it seem like they said something that they didn't. So when I put out calls for these types of conversations where people are pouring their hearts out to me, I'm been very fortunate that there's lots of people who are willing to talk to me about it.
Yeah. Where did the title, or at least the wording of your title of your book, come from?
Oh, that's a great question, and that there's kind of an interesting answer. I didn't like the title at first, so we did not have a title until about 2 weeks before we were getting ready to pitch, and I'd had some ideas, and I wasn't super happy, and I was talking to my agent, and I was in a panic saying, we don't have a title yet, and he's like, don't worry about it, we'll figure something. And then he said, okay, send me 10 or send me a bunch of title ideas, like just any whatever pops in your head, anything you think. And so I came up with, I think it was a list of about 10, and the title for The Holy Shit Moment was way down the list. And then he came back a couple days later saying, we're calling it The Holy Shit Moment. And I said, really? I didn't really like that one very much. And he said, don't worry about it. This is all we care about now is making the sale. And I can tell you that publishers will react well to this. And if you, and we're not married to it. It's just about getting the sale. And later on we can change it if you want. Yeah. And I said, okay, fine. That sounds good. And we had I can't even remember. We had the crappiest subtitle ever. It was way too long and way too focused, and it was just stupid. And so we went in, and every publisher said, I love this title. And I'm like, really? And then when we went with St. Martin's, and I had my first meeting with my publisher, my editor, who's just a wonderful woman, I adore her. And I said, I'm if you want to change this title, I'm totally cool with that, because I'm not real super excited about it. And she goes, we really like it. I mean, if somebody comes up with something better, yeah, it's good to know that you're not married to it, but no, we see no reason to change it. And then later on, it was actually the head publisher, I guess, at St. Martin's that came up with the subtitle, which the instant I heard it, I said, that's a great subtitle, which is How Lasting Change Can Happen in an Instant, because it's just so it nailed it. That's what the book is about. How lasting change can happen in an instant. And I was like, that's perfect. But as I started writing, I started referring to these events as having a holy shit moment. And everybody we talked to just said, that title's great. It's so perfect. And so I warmed up to it where I said, like this event